Okay, welcome back to the second part of our Android lists with SQLite database. And in the last installment of this app, or video for this app, we had written a custom list adapter, and I had showed you how to populate that list adapter, and then we had set up where we could look at some contacts, and if we selected those contacts, then we had some toast notifications and things happen. On the long press, we could say edit, delete. We set up this context menu, but we didn't actually make it to where anything happened. So right now, if we click edit or if we click delete, it just says what it is that we clicked. So this is where we left off in the last video. If you need to go back and catch up on that, that's where you'll want to go first. So in this video, we're going to finish up what we started and look at how to actually open up a separate activity for editing and then delete that contact from the database if that's what the user has decided to do with that context menu. So since one of the things that I want to do is allow a second activity to open for the purposes of editing that contact information, I need to go ahead and set up that activity. So I'm here in my Solution Explorer, and I'm going to right click on my project and I'm going to add a new item, and I want an Android layout, and I'm going to name this layout, let's name it ContactEdit. And so we'll add that. And so that will go ahead and open up and put that under our layout section. Or if it doesn't, you can move it like that. And then we need to create our CS file, or our activity code that is going to run, like in our main activity, runs our main AXML. We're going to create a class basically that runs our ContactEdit AXML. Okay, so now that we have our layout, we will create our activity. So we'll go and right click, add a new item. We're going to choose activity, and this is going to be the ContactEdit activity. And so that will go ahead and set us up with all the correct things and an onCreate and everything that we need for our activity. And we basically need to join together our AXML file and our activity file. And if you remember, that happens here in the onCreate with the set content view. So set content view, resource layout, ContactEdit, because that is what I named my layout over here. We can see what its name is usually. Well, you named it, right? when you made it. So this is our ContactEdit activity, and this is what we want to call when the user selects edit from our context menu over in the main activity. So we had set this up over here with this toast notification. Let me get rid of this Solution Explorer so we can see that better. So right now we are just pulling up a toast notification that says you selected this for item that, menu name, contact name, things like that. So instead of this toast notification, we need to set up some logic in here so that we can determine, did they choose edit or delete. And it is the menu item name that we're going to use. So if they choose edit, then we can decide what we want to do. We're going to open up our other activity and populate it with the current contact info, so the user can edit if they want, or if the menu item name is delete, Oops. Sorry, forget there's a space there in C#. Then we want to delete the contact from the database and update the displayed contacts so that it is no longer there. And so to get started, I will first want to go ahead and get my activity over here set up with some items that I'm going to need to populate with that contact information. So looking back at our class, just to remind ourselves of what we are storing here, we are storing a name and a phone number. So I'm going to need two different boxes here, and I'm going to need probably like text edit fields so that if the user wants to change the information that's in the field, they can do that. So let's go with a couple of text fields here. Oh no, yeah, okay. So we'll call this one. We're just doing name, right? So name, some labels, and then where's my So I'm going to get my plain text field. We'll just put that right here and give it a name. In fact, we're just going to call it edit name. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing for phone number. Oops, there we go. And I'm just copying and pasting so I don't have to keep dragging them out of the toolbox. And this is going to be edit phone. And then we'll need some kind of, hey, I'm done, submit button kind of thing. You could do like a submit or a cancel. I'm just going to do one button that takes us back to the main activity. So what we want to do here is from the main activity, if the user clicks edit, we want to open this activity over here and populate the name and phone number information for the contact that they have selected, and that way if they make changes to it, when they click submit, we're going to come back to the main activity over here and we are going to update that information that they have provided for us so that the contact gets edited. Okay, so let's get started on how we can do this, and I figured I would just walk you through it instead of having you suffer through me typing it out. I got a new keyboard and honestly we're not getting along very well. So I've talked about this before, how to pass data back and forth between an intent or using our intent when we're starting a new activity. So we set up our new activity, var, whatever we want to name it, our new intent. And our intent takes a context and it takes a type. And so the context is this because we're moving from this activity to another. And then in the case of our type, it's whatever activity we're trying to launch. So we named that ContactEdit activity. And then we can use the put extra. So put extra allows us to create basically name value pairs that are then passed over to that activity, and we can pick those up on the other side and manipulate those. So with put extra, we can take and create a name, and I made one small change here. So up here, we were using var to pull out that contact. Instead, I made that its object name of contact so that we could reference the name and phone number down here. So you can see our name value pairs. And then the last thing we do is call the start activity with the name of our intent that we want to create. And so that will start our ContactEdit activity and launch our ContactEdit view. And then over here in our onCreate, we need to set up two, in this case, strings, because they're both string data, of the name and phone using getStringExtra. So name and phone will be put into these variables, and then we can get a hold of our text boxes. So we need to populate our text boxes with this information so the user will be able to see that. So that's should be pretty easy for us at this point, right? We grab our boxes, resource ID, edit name, and we set that to the name variable, and edit phone, and we set that to the phone variable. So let's take a look at what this looks like right now and what we're getting out of our app. So hopefully we can all see that okay. So you can see our app running, and when I long press on one of these, we get our context menu. And when I select edit, then it launches my new activity, and we can see that the name and phone number for in this case Debbie is already filled in those text boxes like we have intended. So great. Now next what we want to do is be able to change this information. So if I come in here and I say, oh well, I don't want her name to be, it's not Debbie, it's Deborah, right? So when I click submit, which right now doesn't do anything, I want that to update. So I want that to take me all the way back to the main activity and ultimately update what is stored in our database. Okay, so step one is to set up our ButtonClick event. So here is the code for getting the submit button that I created for our ContactEdit activity earlier. And so you can see in here the comment that I've made: when the user submits the activity form, we want to pass the name and phone number back to the main activity. So we can just go ahead and update. So what is in name is ultimately going to be from name box. So we'll just turn these two statements around. And then what is in phone is going to be in phone box. So both .text. And so whatever, and if they didn't change anything, great. But we're just going to go ahead and assume that they did at this point. But if they didn't, then you'll just be writing the same data back. So if they did change either the name or the phone number, and you could always check to see if they did in fact manipulate any of this data before actually processing an update. But we're just going to go ahead and look at how you would update if you wanted to. So we've got the name and phone number, and now we need to pass it back to the main activity. Okay, so at this point you could do the exact same thing we did to get the data back to the main activity that we did to get it to ContactEdit activity, but I wanted to show you a much better way. So over here in our main activity, when we launched this activity, instead of using start activity and giving it our intent, if you use start activity for result, you are able to better control what happens to the data when it comes back from a child activity. So in this case, start activity for result still takes our intent that we set up, but you can see that it also is set up to take basically like an integer request code. And so in this case, I'm just using 1 to indicate like a yes or no. So when we start activity for result, when we're done, so in this case, they click submit, we grab the name and the phone number, we still set up an intent like usual, we still use put extra like usual, except we do this set result. So I'm using a result OK, which is a -1. There's a couple of different results that are built in here. So you can see a canceled first user, right, or OK. In this case, it doesn't matter because I'm just going to be checking for whatever I want, and then our intent that we've set up. Now we call finish, and that's going to close our activity. It's going to take these two pieces of data, and it's going to come back to our main activity, and it's going to be looking for a method called onActivityResult. So this is where I'm going to put this down here. So I'm going to override onActivityResult and get rid of this base code. And so you can see it's expecting some request codes and a result code and things like that. So what we can do in here on activity result is check for things like if the request code equals 1, right, then we can respond to that. If we can look for a result OK, we can look for you can set up your own custom results and then or custom codes, and then check for those specifically. And so in this case, once the user clicks the submit button over here and passes these two pieces of data back, it's going to come back to the main activity, and it's going to come into our if statement right here, and we need to collect the new or updated name and phone number for our contact, and then we need to update that data for our contact. So I went ahead and put those 2 lines in here and ran it on a debug so that you could double check. So if request code equals 1, I clicked on Debbie in our contact list and then just hit submit on our ContactEdit activity. And so data is our intent. That is what we can see up here in the list for this method. So if you put your mouse over name, we can see that it contains Debbie. And if we put our mouse over phone, it contains the phone number. If I had made changes to Debbie's name, like named her Deborah or something on the ContactEdit activity, then we would now have that data over here in the main activity ready to update. Okay, so we want to update the contact with this name and phone information, but which contact? So the fun part is, since the name may have changed or the phone number may have changed, you can't use that information to try to determine which contact should be updated. So honestly, we need to be managing which contact it is that we're trying to edit. And since we're not, then it becomes kind of a problem. So I'm actually going to backtrack up here to where we originally did that toast notification and just set up an ID. And we're pulling the correct contact object out using the info.position. And so I'm just going to set up an ID so we know which one it is in the list. And I could go ahead and make that class level. So I should be able to return to that when I want to find out which contact it is down here that I want to update. Yeah. So int ID, not var. Can't use var on class levels. Totally my fault. Okay, so, and I'm going to go ahead and put a breakpoint in here so that you can see how this looks when we run it. But we're pulling out the appropriate contact from the My Contacts array, and then we're updating the name and phone number to that specific, or to the information that we were given by the user, so that it now matches what we got on the ContactEdit activity. So here you can see I did update her name to Deborah, and she has the same phone number. The contact we're pulling from the ID that we made sure that we have been tracking is our Deborah contact. And we can see that I updated that information. So her name's been updated and her phone number has been updated. And now, let me go ahead and proceed through here. Now when we look at our app, we can see her name has been correctly updated in our list now that we have processed that information. And that's it. That is how we edit a contact. So I should be able to walk through this. Let me get rid of my breakpoint. So like in the case of Sam, if I long press on Sam, get my context menu, click edit. Let's say I want to change Sam's name to Samuel, and his phone number is going to change from 5555 to 8888, and I click submit. Now I can see Samuel's correct name and phone number in our list. So the last thing we want to do is make sure that our list matches what we have, our database matches what we have in our list. Now normally just updating the database would be as simple as making sure that you have a connection to the database and then calling update with your object. But unfortunately, bad planning or whatever, we didn't set up primary keys, and so if you try to run this as is, it's going to crash. So let me show you how to put in the primary keys to wrap this up. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is come over to my contact class. I'm going to add an employee ID property, and I'm going to go ahead and add this into my constructor. Now I don't want to add it to my toString because I'm not going to display this ID. I'm just going to use it as a method of making sure I can keep track of the correct employee. Over in the main activity, oops, I set these up as strings. We can put in the ID numbers for our employees. Put quotes on the front of these. Oops. So now each employee will be created with an employee ID. Over in our contact class is where we actually set up and define if this is the primary key. Make sure you have the using statement for SQLite in there, or otherwise it won't know what you're talking about. And you could also come in here and set up things like auto increments. If you wanted to do that on your primary keys, that would work just as well. So once we've resolved that, just connecting to the database and then running update for our contact will in fact update our database. So then if I pull that out and run it again, I would be able to see any updates that I then made to our data that we're storing in our database. Now I have a method down here that deletes all the records in the table every time I execute, because since we run over and over and over again to test and I'm adding 3 employees each time, this database file can get quite large very quickly. So if you are doing kind of the same thing, adding a method like this, and then you can see up here I am calling it right here when we set up the database connection before we create the table and add our contacts. Now once I start a production or feel that I'm in a point where I don't need to delete all my records every time, I can remove that delete all. So I'm going to do that now so you can see what this looks like now that it is running correctly. So you can see what it looks like when I turn off the deletion. I have a lot of contacts in my list, and so that's basically why I do that. Okay, so the last thing that we wanted to do was delete the contact and update the displayed contacts if they decide to choose delete from our context menu. And so this actually seems pretty simple because we don't have to have an extra activity, or we're not switching back and forth between windows or anything like that. We can do this kind of a number of different ways. So for things like this, where if they hold down the long press, they're going to get the edit delete context menu. If they click delete, then we want to just prompt, right? So in this case, I'm using the alert dialog builder. And so in our builder, we can create a set message. So this is going to say this will delete contact, whatever our contact name is. Okay. And we can set a positive button. What do we want that to say? And they clicked okay. What do we want to do? And a negative button. So in this case, I'm going to call that cancel. And they clicked cancel. And what do we want to do? We just want to return. And so if they clicked okay, then what we want to do is we have that connection to the database, and we'll just connect to the database. Oh, it's down here. And then we will delete. So db.delete our specified contact. So my contact, or my contacts being the current item that we want contact name. Ooh, that would have been weird. Yeah, we want contact name. I don't know that that's in scope. We'll have to go. Oh, I'm in the wrong line down here. My contact. So at this point, we're deleting contact name from the database. The database is going to keep itself basically in check, deleting the correct object. And then if we wanted to go the next step further and delete the contact from the list that we're managing, you could do my contacts, which is our list, .remove, and remove the contact name, and make sure that it is removed from the list as well. Since it's deleted from the database, if you reloaded the app or if you forced the list activity to refresh, then you would no longer see this particular object in our list. But be careful, because remember, in this app we're hard coding those in on create, so you just got to be careful with that. So we've covered a lot of things: the start activity for result, how to kind of make sure that you do things based on the results that you're getting back from various activities, or like in this alert dialog builder, being able to make decisions based on what they clicked on, and then be able to make those transactions with the SQLite database. So I hope you have enjoyed our foray into custom list adapters, doing activities and being able to pass this data back and forth, doing transactions with our SQLite database, working towards, kind of a more robust app. So I doubt I'll get to another video before Christmas, but I will definitely be putting one out for the new year and have lots of new things in store and planned. So stay tuned, and if you want this code, you can get it off of my GitHub and go check it out. And as always, leave me any feedback. Thanks!